evening, peoples. I'm Pastor Leia, and this is my co-host, Gingersnap. So welcome back to our living room as we conclude our series tonight on the Ten Commandments. It has very fittingly been a 10-week series, so we're on number 10. So, to review, the Ten Commandments are numbered differently in different traditions, but I'm Presbyterian, so I'm going to go by the Presbyterian counting because of who I am as a person. So 1, God alone is God. There's just the one God. Don't worship other gods. 2, don't keep idols. A lot of times in the Bible, idols have like horns. I feel like this is more rabbit ears than horns, but that's anyway. So 3, don't misrepresent God's will, usually phrased as don't take the Lord's name in vain. I happen to prefer don't put words in God's mouth. Don't go around saying, God wants me to murder people. God does not want you to murder people. God is actually pretty explicit about that. So historically speaking, when people have been like, yeah, God wants me to kill those people, no, read the Bible. Anyway. Side rant. 4, keep the Sabbath day. The thumb is resting here for number 4. 5, honor your parents, maybe a salute, or keeping a family unit together by creating a healthy structure. So 6, don't murder, unless it's spiders. This is me talking, not God. I don't want to put words in God's mouth, but spiders should be murdered. So 7, don't commit adultery. When 2 people make vows in front of God and their community, those vows mean something, and they should strive to be faithful to those vows in ways other than not just committing adultery, but also being faithful and supportive partners, and not making fun of their spouse at every opportunity. There's a whole genre of comedy in which people like mock their spouses, and I am not married, but I would hope that if I were, my spouse would not talk about me like that. So let's see, 8, don't steal or you go to jail, be behind bars. Gingersnap is very fond of breaking that commandment. So 9, don't lie, we did last week, and now tonight we have don't covet, which she also is rather bad at following. So, tonight, the final commandment from Exodus 20:17, you shall not covet your neighbor's house, you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or male or female slave, or ox, or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. See, on my summary bracelet, I've merely got thou shalt not covet, which I think sums it up pretty well. I may not be a perfect person, but I can honestly say I have never coveted my neighbor's ox or donkey, not even once. So, the word here, chamad, I think, probably mispronouncing that. So, yet again, I lugged out my BDB, which is a massive lexicon, like a dictionary specifically of the words in the Bible in Hebrew. So, let's see, meanings here include... let's see from the call A. In bad sense of inordinate, ungoverned, selfish desire. To take pleasure in, of idolatrous tendency. Idolatrous tendency, I like that. That you want something so bad that you're making it an idol. So dictionary.com defines the verb to covet as to desire wrongfully, inordinately, or without due regard for the rights of others. It might also be translated as to lust after, which is also a very colorful kind of phrase. So, fun fact, as I alluded to a moment ago, because different traditions number the Ten Commandments differently, because when we read them in the text, there's no commandment number 1, do this, commandment number 2, do this, etc. It's just kind of a list, and we've decided that there should be 10 of them, and so we've lumped them into 10 commandments. So we as Presbyterians and most Protestants, for us this is one commandment, but Catholics and Lutherans divided into 2 commandments. So number 9 is you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, and number 10 is you shall not covet your neighbor's house, slave, ox, donkey, etc. So we have been reading the commandments as they're recorded in the book of Exodus, but they are also repeated later in the book of Deuteronomy. There's a lot of things that get repeated throughout the Bible. It's kind of part of the style of literature in many cases that something happens and then the person to whom it happens then recounts the story to somebody else, maybe even more than once. This also happens, it takes up most of the page count of Beowulf. It's kind of a genre thing, but the Ten Commandments are important enough that they should come up more than once, and so they are repeated in the book of Deuteronomy. When it comes up in Exodus, it's part of the narrative of Moses coming down from the mountain with these rules, and then in the context of Deuteronomy, they are within other rules, because they continue to be important throughout the generations. Anyway, so in order for coveting to be two separate commandments, 9 and 10, Catholics and Lutherans count no other gods, which we would have as 2, and don't keep idols as 1 commandment and not 2 like we do. No other gods is 1, no idols is 2. Anyway, so they count that as 1 commandment. Anyway, so are these differences ultimately that significant? Probably not. It's just a fun fact and can be confusing in conversation if you are referring to the commandments by number. So just fun fact for future references. The numbers themselves are not written in stone. How's that for a 10 Commandments joke? Okay, fine. So, why shalt we not covet? What makes it so terrible? Also, if you wanted to read the other accounting of the commandments, it's chapter 5 of Deuteronomy, if you wanted to look that up for extra credit, not that you're being graded on anything. Difference between wanting and coveting is a pretty important distinction, I think. So wanting something, we're going to go with the example of a nicer home. Sure, why not? Because I don't personally think that the idea of coveting an ox or a donkey is very relatable. So if you want a nicer home, that might spur you to work towards the goal of being able to obtain it. That's fine. But coveting something, say someone else's home specifically, might not be obtainable. They probably don't want to sell it to you unless one breaks other commandments to get it by murdering, stealing, or lying. Don't do those things. So wanting is part of being human, and it's how we as a species make progress and innovation and grow as individuals, because we want to improve ourselves and improve our society and make positive changes. If we didn't want positive changes, then we'd be a completely stagnant society and probably would still be hunting and gathering or whatever. However, coveting is narrow-minded and leads not to progress, but to resentment. So you can want something that is like what someone else has, but still be perfectly happy for them to have that thing or whatever. If you covet what someone else has, you can't be happy for them. So the difference might be that your coworker is having a retirement party, and hey, I would like to be retired at some point. Little bit envious of you, but at the same time, I'm genuinely happy for you. I'm not lying when I say congratulations, I hope you have the best possible retirement and get to do everything that you've been wanting to do for years when I write that in a card. That's healthy. I would like to retire, but that doesn't mean that I'm not happy for my friend to be retiring. Whereas a person who covets the retirement might be they get to retire. Why don't I get to retire? This cake is dumb. And just not happy at this retirement party. I've been to one retirement party in my life. I think there was cake. I don't actually remember. Not the point. So coveting goes beyond just dreaming of something or appreciating it or liking the idea of it. Coveting wants to get the thing. and it isn't always concerned about how that happens. And if that's not necessarily a moral way of making that happen, I mean, you want to get the thing more than you want the getting to be like done nicely. So it is not feasible to stop wanting anything ever because like we're human and that's what we do. But maybe when we want something, we should try to think about why it is that we want it, maybe what having it would mean, and whether it's obtainable. So going back to the wanting a nice home example, because wanting the donkey is whatever. So maybe case study A, because you want a nice home for your family, or maybe your family is 6 poodles of various sizes because that counts as a family. And oh man, I wish I had 6 poodle friends. Anyway, so because you want a nice home for your family of dogs, you research your options, you compromise where necessary, and you find a location and career path in which you can apply your skills effectively in order to afford the kind of home you want with a great big yard for all of your dogs to play in. So that's case study A. But perhaps case study B, you think it would be cool to have a nicer home. And maybe it would be better for your family for whatever reason. You know, the dogs are a little cramped in the yard at the moment, and you would like to be able to throw the ball farther for them. But at the same time, you know that you can't afford it, and that there are bigger priorities in your life. You think about it every now and then, maybe even you think about it often, but the desire does not consume you. So, in contrast, case study C, you want a nice home. You spend a lot of your free time watching home design shows and house hunters, whatever, and attending open houses or looking at houses for sale online. You tell yourself that it's research, but what really goes through your mind is frustration that other people have what you don't. They don't deserve it. It's not fair. And of course, option D, you plot a way to lower property values in your neighborhood so that you can drive your neighbor out and buy their house for cheap because it has, I don't know, bigger closets than yours or something. That last one's kind of a jerk move. And don't do this, but there's always the option of being like King Ahab in the book of 1 Samuel or 2 Samuel. Anyway, he wants some dude's vineyard, and so he has him killed so that he can take it over. Don't do that. It's just bad idea all around. All kinds of commandments and things are being broken there. So, anyway, so those are all 4 examples of wanting something, but maybe for different reasons and approaching it in different ways. So, has there ever been something or maybe someone that you thought would make your life maybe not like perfectly happy, because let's be real here, we're never going to be perfectly happy, but maybe at least like significantly happier? Did you obtain it? Did it make you happier? Was it worth it? That might be something like a large purchase or the career path that you've always wanted to go on, maybe the idea of being married. I would like to think that being married would, improve one's life and make one significantly happier. Again, I wouldn't know, but I would hope that it would. Moving to a different area, maybe to be closer to family or to have more job opportunities, that might make you significantly happier and might legitimately improve your life. Wanting something is not always a bad thing, but I'm pretty sure we can all remember things in our lives that we really wanted to get one specific job, but it turned out that the coworkers and the managers were just the worst, or you really thought that some new kitchen tool would just innovate all of your cooking and like whatever, but then it turns out it's really hard to clean, and so you never want to use it because it's hard to clean. Whatever, something like that. I'm sure we all have those examples. So Jesus summarizes all of the law and the prophets and all of the writings of the Bible as summing up to 2 things. 1, you shall love the Lord with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And 2, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. So how does this commandment encourage us to love God and to love our neighbor? On the one hand, in loving God, it definitely encourages us to be grateful for what we do have, which is a thing that we should try to do on occasion. Again, wanting things isn't necessarily bad, but somewhere in that we should still pause to appreciate what we do have. And of course, if you are constantly obsessing over how you want what your neighbor has, because their donkeys are just so much cuter than yours, I don't know, then you're not exactly respecting or loving your neighbor very much. And the more you think that you want that specific thing that somebody else has, the less you think of them as a person, and the more you vilify them in your mind because you should have it. They don't deserve it. And just the resentment builds and it just eats you up inside, and it's bad times all around. But instead, we should try to support each other in good times. The fact that somebody else has something good happen to them doesn't necessarily mean that something bad has happened to me. It doesn't hurt me to be happy for them, and it increases our, bond of friendship or whatever. Have you ever had the experience where you got a promotion or had a really good hair day or found a penny on the sidewalk, if that's your thing? You're like, hey, cool, and your friend's like, whatever. Like that's not a very good feeling. It's like, dude, friend, you're not a very good friend. You should be happy for me. Anyway, so we should support each other and want the kind of society in which we can all have nice lives and be supported by ourselves and not be in constant need of other things. So, and this one can't decide if she wants to be up or down. Okay, go figure. Cats always wanting what they don't have. So anyway, over this past 10 weeks, we've looked at the commandments, which I think most of us have heard a number of times. Some of us even happen to own them on bracelets. I forget when or why I even got this, but it's a cute accessory. But we don't always really think about them in depth because some of them seem on the surface pretty straightforward. For example, don't murder. I mean, just don't murder. But there are layers of implications beneath them and all sorts of ethical questions to be asked about them. And since we do consider the Ten Commandments to be a, pretty big deal of things to do or not do, they are important to think about every now and then and reflect on. When John Calvin led services, he would have them read in every single service. That's how important he thought that they were. Anyway, so we'll start in on a new series next week, so stay tuned. But in the meanwhile, if you have questions or themes or a favorite book that you think it would be cool to go through, let me know, and maybe that would come up in the future. Peoples, I am going to bother my cat so that she can say goodnight to you all, and we hope that you are all well and doing your best to obey the commandments, all 613 of them in the Hebrew Bible, not just the 10. But anyway, we hope that you are trying to be good people and to live good lives that love God and that love your neighbor. And so good night until we see you again.